All right, so get this today's deep dive. Well, it might sound a little bit crazy at first.
Oh.
Yeah, we're going with why I love failing. And you should too.
Hmm.
I know. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? But just stick with me here.
Okay.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, an intense exploration of how you show up in life, business, and relationships, and how they're all connected in the infinite thread that is you. So let's get into the dive. Here's your hosts, Marcus and Nara.
Hi there, deep divers. I'm Nara Daniels.
And I'm Marcus Harrison.
Let's dive in.
We're going to be diving into the work of Coach Dan Gordon.
Okay.
And we'll unpack why embracing failure just might be the secret to success and some serious personal growth.
That does sound a little odd,
Yeah,
but I think that's what's kind of cool about it. And this is where his work gets super interesting. He actually loves failing.
He loves failing.
Yeah.
I mean, we can learn from our mistakes, but to love them?
Well, of course, he doesn't necessarily enjoy the feeling of failing,
Right.
but he loves what it means. It's like he sees failure as this like hidden treasure chest, just
Right.
chock full of valuable lessons and insights.
So he's not talking about like celebrating epic fails or anything.
Yeah.
More like seeing the potential in those failures.
No. Exactly. He uses this analogy about, burning your finger on a hot stove.
Oh, yeah.
It hurts like crazy in the moment, right?
Absolutely.
But you learn a powerful lesson that you just never forget.
You never forget that feeling. And you are way more careful around stoves after that.
Right.
I bet everyone listening can relate to that.
Yeah.
It's almost like the worse the failure, the more vivid the lesson.
We tend to obsess over our failures,
Mm.
like replaying them in our minds over and over again,
Yeah.
while our successes, they kind of fade into the background way faster.
That's so true. Why do we do that?
Yeah.
It seems like that would be, I don't know, almost counterproductive, wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
To focus on the negative stuff.
Well, one reason
Yeah.
is that success can be a bit like,
Oh, do they?
like an addiction. You experience a bunch of wins in a row. We get hooked on that feeling,
Uh-huh.
and that can actually make us more afraid of failing and less likely to take risks that could lead to,
Oh,
even bigger success.
So we get so comfortable on that winning streak that we'd rather just play it safe than risk losing it all.
Yeah.
But then, ironically, that mindset might make us more vulnerable to failing in the long run.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I find so interesting about Coach Dan Gordon's perspective.
Yeah.
This idea that trying too hard to avoid failure
Mm-hmm.
can actually just lead to disaster.
Oh, wow.
He uses his own story as an example.
Okay.
He talks about how his marketing firm collapsed back in 2015.
Oh, no.
He calls it his $70,000 a month
Wow.
because that's how much business he lost in just 30 days.
That's a huge gut punch.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how devastating that must have been.
Dan describes it as just crushing. He had poured everything into that company,
Right. Yeah.
and to see it fall apart, it was incredibly painful.
Yeah.
He even talks about hitting rock bottom,
Oh, great.
finding himself face down on his hotel room floor, just totally sobbing uncontrollably.
Mm. So then what did he do? Did he immediately try to get things going again, like pick up the pieces and rebuild?
He did something that most people wouldn't expect.
Oh.
Instead of trying to fix everything right away,
Yeah.
he surrendered.
He surrendered.
Yeah, he let himself fully experience the pain and the disappointment, the grief of that failure.
That seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Isn't the natural instinct to fight back, to try to regain control?
It is, but Dan realized that in that moment of surrender, something shifted. He wasn't trying to force a solution anymore.
Right.
He was just letting himself feel everything that had happened.
Ah.
And that's when the real learning began. So he talks about visiting the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum during that tough time.
Aye.
And he's there
Yeah.
surrounded by stories of these incredible achievements, right?
Right.
The Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, like
Yeah.
people who just dared to push the limits of what was possible.
Yeah.
And it really hit him.
What he realized.
That these weren't just stories about perseverance.
Okay.
They were stories about surrender.
Surrender. How so?
Yeah.
I mean, these were people known for never giving up.
That's true.
Yeah.
But Dan points out that they all faced these crazy obstacles.
Yeah.
Like times where giving up would have made total sense.
Oh, I see.
But instead of getting stuck resisting,
Uh-huh.
they surrendered to the problem. They
yeah.
let themselves be challenged,
Stuck out.
let go of their old ideas, And that's what allowed the new solutions to come through.
Oh, that's a powerful way to think about it.
It is.
So it's not about giving up.
No.
It's about surrendering to the process,
Exactly.
the challenges, the inevitable bumps in the road.
Yeah, his whole coaching philosophy is built around embracing failure.
Right.
And he argues that this is really where the magic happens.
Okay.
When we stop being afraid to fail and start seeing it as an opportunity, that's when we unlock our potential for growth and creativity.
It's almost like we're so conditioned to avoid failure that we don't learn from it.
Right.
We try so hard to play it safe that we never really venture into the unknown.
Yeah.
Which is where the real discoveries often happen.
He has this great metaphor.
Wow.
He says failure is like this buffet of knowledge.
Okay.
But we're standing there starving.
Why?
Because we're too afraid to try anything.
I like that.
We're so worried about messing up that we miss out on all the amazing learning and growth that comes from failure.
Okay, so how do we actually break free from that fear?
Yeah, how do we change our mindset to embrace failure instead of avoiding it?
Right.
Well, Dan suggests shining a light on our failures.
Okay.
Instead of hiding them,
Yeah.
we should be talking about them openly and honestly.
That sounds kind of scary.
I know, it can feel really vulnerable.
Yeah.
But that's where the courage comes in.
Yeah, okay.
Dan wants us to share our failures, not from a place of shame or anything,
Right.
but as learning experiences.
Say, hey, I messed up, but here's what I learned from it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we help ourselves process and learn. But we also make it okay for others to fail too.
Interesting.
We show them that it's okay to stumble and make mistakes.
Right.
Because it's all part of the journey.
So it's about creating a culture where failure isn't a bad thing,
Exactly.
but almost like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It means we're willing to take risks and push ourselves out of our comfort zones.
That's it. Dan Gordon even has some practical advice on how to use failure to your advantage.
I'm listening.
He says the first thing is to reframe your thinking. Don't see failure as a setback.
Okay.
See it as a chance to learn and grow.
So changing I failed to what can I learn from this?
Exactly. And another important point is to analyze your failures. Dig deep and ask yourself some tough questions.
Like what?
Well, like what went wrong?
Okay.
What could I have done differently? What are the key takeaways from this experience?
It's not just about noticing the failure. We need to break it down and really understand it.
Yeah, and use it to become even more successful.
And then once we figured out those lessons,
Right.
what do we do with them?
Share them.
Share them. With who?
With anyone.
Oh, wow.
Friends, family, colleagues, mentors.
Okay.
Sharing our failures can be so powerful,
Yeah.
both for ourselves and for the people who hear our stories.
So we're creating this support network
Exactly.
where we all learn from each other's experiences and encourage each other to embrace those inevitable bumps in the road.
And lastly, this all takes courage.
Okay.
It takes guts to go outside your comfort zone, to embrace failure as part of the process. But he believes that it's in those moments of courage where we really reach our full potential.
That makes sense.
It's about being brave enough to say, I might fail,
Yeah.
but I'm going for it anyway.
Choosing growth over safety.
That's it. And this all comes back to Dan Gordon's $70,000 a month.
Oh, yeah.
That experience.
Yeah.
As hard as it was, it helped him grow and change.
It did.
It made him face his fears,
Okay.
rethink his priorities, and come up with a whole new way to approach success.
So that failure was actually his greatest teacher.
Exactly. It was painful,
I bet.
but it was also a turning point in his life.
Wow.
It led him to this whole philosophy of embracing failure, which he now shares with the world.
That's amazing.
It just goes to show that even our darkest moments, our most painful failures,
Right.
they can actually hold the seeds of something incredible.
That's a cool thought.
It's up to us to have the courage to find those seeds and help them grow into something beautiful.
It sounds like he's really pushing for us to think differently about failing.
Yeah, he's not saying we should go out and try to fail or anything,
Right.
but more about how we react when it happens.
Okay.
To see it as part of growing, like a stepping stone to success.
And that connects back to what we were saying about personal growth being just as important as reaching those external goals.
Absolutely. Chasing success can be kind of like a track.
Really?
We get so focused on hitting those goals that we forget about the journey itself. And it's in the journey, all the challenges we face and overcome.
Yeah.
That's where we really grow.
So it's not about giving up on our goals,
Right.
but understanding that the value is in the journey towards them.
That's a great way to put it.
Embracing the highs and lows, the good and the bad.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best things about this message.
What's that?
That success isn't just about the destination.
Okay.
It's about becoming a better version of ourselves along the way.
So developing resilience.
Yeah.
Being resourceful and understanding our own strengths.
And knowing that failure, if we think about it the right way, can teach us a lot.
And it all comes back to that idea of courage.
Right, exactly.
Being brave enough to step outside of our comfort zone, take risks, and know we might mess up.
In those moments of courage, that's when we really shine.
Having the guts to say, hey, I might fail, but I'm going to try anyway.
Exactly. And when we share our stories, being honest about our struggles, we not only help ourselves, but we give others permission to do the same.
That's cool.
It creates this environment of support where failure isn't a bad thing.
Right.
It shows that we're willing to push ourselves and go after big things.
So ultimately, that's what Dan Gordon is asking us to do.
He's inviting us to embrace that journey of growth.
With all the messiness and challenges that come with it.
Yeah.
It's a call to action to change how we think about failure.
To see it as a starting point, not an ending.
So we can all become the best versions of ourselves.
That's it. And to wrap things up,
yeah,
we want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
Think about a time when you stumbled, when you didn't quite reach your goal, or maybe even had a big setback.
Okay.
What did you learn? How did it shape you? And how can it help you achieve something amazing in the future?
Remember, failing isn't the enemy.
It's a chance to learn and grow and become stronger.
Embrace it, learn from it, and share your journey with others.
Until next time.
I'm Marcus Harrison.
And I'm Nara Daniels.
Catch you next time.
We hope you enjoyed the deep dive. Subscribe to the podcast for more deep dives as Nara and Marcus traverse the infinite exploration into the mind and soul of you. We'll see you next time on The Dive.